But I want to start off with just a couple ground rules. I know your time is valuable this time of year. Well, your time's always valuable, but especially this time of year. My time's valuable, your time's valuable. So I'm going to ask you a couple things. Number one is if you've got your cell phone with you, if you please shut that off, I'd appreciate it. And number two is if you have questions, if you please just write those questions down for me. I'd also appreciate that if we could hold those to the end. I've got another obligation that I need to be at, so we need to get through this as soon as we can. And if there's time at the end, I'll be happy to answer those if we can. Otherwise, let me give you this information. Let me get things rocking and rolling for you, okay? But tonight, I've got one of my star students here. He's going to take just a couple minutes to kind of tell you about his experience. Kimber, if you feel so inclined, I'd love to hear from you too. But Clarence, if you want to come up, take the floor for just a minute. Stand by me so my microphone picks you up, please.
Okay. My name's Clarence Peck. We've been coming about a little over 3 months. And when I first started coming, I had gone almost to 300 pounds at times and tried and couldn't lose. Anyway, I had to have shoulder surgery, so I went in for pre-op. Before we got home, they called us and told me my sugar level was over 600. They needed me to go immediately to a hospital or to my doctor. So I was in trouble. And we got started up here, got on the diet. We finally had to go to my doctor, my medical doctor, because I lost weight and my blood pressure had dropped way down and my sugar level was down. So I was getting dizzy and having a problem that way. And he took me off at that time 3 of my heart medicines and left me on a half of a pill to take a day out of the 4, and some others. I have leg problems, and anyway, it's just been great. My blood pressure's probably like your kids' are, very seldom over 110 on the top, where it was, you know where.
How many pounds have you lost?
Oh, almost 40.
So close to 40. And how many meds total are we off of now?
10.
10 medications. That's awesome. Thank you, Clarence.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That's fantastic. Kimber, do you want to add anything? Sure. Excuse me. Nothing like coughing on your microphone, right? That's going to sound great on the video.
Well, I've been coming for about 2.5 months. I come in about 315 pounds, and diabetes has been out of control forever. And I was shooting about 260 units of insulin a day between the long-acting and the slow-acting. After 2 months, I no longer use insulin at all, and weight keeps going on.
I'm excited.
We're excited to do what we're
Excited to have this conversation again in about 3 months, man. That's awesome.
Hey, one more comment. When I went to my doctor, I was no longer a diabetic.
That's amazing. Makes me love my job. It makes it a lot of fun to deal with these people. To have people like Clarence, people like Kimber, and have people back. It gives me a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure. That's why I'm excited to do these things. All right, I'm excited to be here tonight. My excitement may be a little different than your excitement is, though. Hey, my excitement comes from the knowledge base that I have that I want to share with you tonight and get this process started for you. Okay? I know the story. Okay? I can't sit here and have empathy for you. I've never had diabetes. Okay? My chronic problem wasn't really a chronic problem, but it only lasted about 6 months. And it was 9 years ago when I went through chemotherapy. I had testicular cancer, and everything's fine now. Please don't worry about me in the least. But I know what it's like to be absolutely 100% reliant on a medical doctor or other health professionals telling you what you need to do to be well. Okay? And I know what it's like for I know what that frustration's like to be dependent on these medications for survival. Okay, tonight, what I'm hoping to do, or what I think where we're at right now, is there is a valley that's standing between where you are right now. You're better looking than that. Hey, there's a chasm or a valley between where you're at now and where Kimber and Clarence and I are over on this other side of the valley. All right, so where you're at right now is your blood sugar's high. Okay, so when you go to the doctor and your blood sugar's high, what do?
Give you more meds.
Okay, well, they're going to do some blood tests. Right? They're going to see where the problem is. And when they give you that blood test, the blood test comes back, and once you get the blood test, then what?
Then they give you more.
Then you give medication. Okay? Now, they give you that medication, and please understand, I can't tell you to take your drugs or not take your drugs. Okay? That's against my scope of practice. That's illegal for me to do. All I can do is share the information with you, teach you how to do this, and then it's going to be up to your medical doctor to take you off the drugs. Fair? Okay, so they give you a medication. And that medication, usually you go through what we call honeymoon period, which means in the beginning, it works really well. You start to see your blood sugar drop. You start to see that A1C number drop. But then what happens? You plateau, or it stops working. And when it stops working, then what?
They give you more meds.
They give you more medications. Okay? They either increase what you have, which they typically start you off with metformin, and when metformin stops working, they increase your metformin. When it stops working, then they start going to insulin. When they start putting you on insulin, you can mark it on your calendar. The day you start taking insulin, start watching the weight add on. Why? Insulin is what we call a catabolic hormone. Meaning, when you put insulin into the system, yes, your blood sugar is going to get into your cells more efficiently, but your body also starts to build more of you. And when that happens, your weight goes up. So what does the doctor tell you to do?
Go on a diet.
Go on a diet. Reduce your calories, increase your whole grains, okay, reduce your fat intake, and exercise. And it's total crap. It doesn't work.
Because then the body thinks you're starving.
Because then your body thinks it's starving, your brain goes into this starvation mode, and then you cling on to every single calorie you have. And if there's more cells for your body to feed, guess what happens to those cells? They multiply, they require more and more insulin, and you just get locked into this model where Clarence was. How long ago was your blood sugar 600?
Over a year ago. It was in October a year ago.
Okay, so Kimber could tell you the same story. They keep going back. They may send you to their dietitian who teaches you the same principles that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they tell you to exercise more. But you're trying to exercise on a bad fuel system. How well is that going to work out for you?
Doesn't.
Okay, so over here, what we end up with is frustration. Now, this is where I haven't been, so I don't know what this feels like. I knew my health problem. I knew there was a start date and there was an end date. Okay? I didn't get locked into that. This is the way things have to be. And the whole notion of having to learn how to live with this, you don't have to. Okay? What I'm going to share with you tonight is going to get you through that, okay? Now, you end up with frustration. And you're probably going to end up with more and more meds. And then you end up with this mindset that says, this is the way life is, this is what we have to learn how to do or deal with. They even write books about this stuff. It's after 5 o'clock, so if I get a little PG-13, I'm apologizing now. Okay? So what is it going to take to get you from here over to here? How are we going to bridge this gap? How are we going to make it so we get guys like Kimber, guys like Clarence, and the other people we see here in this office how do we get you to that point where you have your independence? Where you know how to take care of yourself. Okay, and that starts tonight. The first thing we're going to put across this chasm is education. All right, over the next half hour, we're going to focus on the education part of this. Okay, the second part of that we're going to fill that chasm with is going to be things like, is she going to go get you more chairs?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. So far, you've missed me jumping around, spitting, and yelling.
Okay,
There's going to be more.
keep jumping and spitting.
You want to sit up here?
No, I-
Okay. The second part of this chasm is going to have to do with your gut and your immune system. This is where the diet comes in. Did anybody see the 3 videos that I did, the 3 secrets? I did some live videos on Facebook last week, okay? The third part of this is going to be, yes, exercise. But we can't do that till we get these foundations put in there. We'll discuss that a little bit tonight. I forgot one level of this. Your gut, your immune system, and your brain. Because guess what controls your metabolism? Your brain. Has anybody here heard of type 3 diabetes before? Type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's disease. Okay. Hi, Jason.
Hey, it's in
How you doing, buddy?
super fantastic.
Awesome. The last part of this chasm that we need to cross. The final brick of this is action. What I mean by action is this. When I'm done bumping my gums up here, what I'm going to ask you to do is, if what I say makes sense to you, I'm going to ask you to make an appointment. Because it doesn't matter how much information I share with you, I can give you all this information I want, but until we make it personal for you, until we made it personal for Clarence, he's not going to get from this side over to here, and over to here was what? Independence. Because what I want out of this is for you to not become my father, who I love dearly. But you go to my dad's house, and you open up his medicine cabinet, what do you think is staring back?
A lot of medicine.
I love you, Dad, but he does not listen to a damn word I say. So when you open up his medicine cabinet, all this medicine is staring back at you. What my dad does not have is freedom. He does not have independence. He is reliant on someone else to tell him what medications to take, what not to take in order to be healthy. And guess what his dad died of?
Diabetes.
Alzheimer's. He was never actually diagnosed with diabetes, but I'd be fascinated to know. And I see my dad at 72 years old slowing down with all these autoimmune problems. And it scares me. So that's where we're going to try to get you tonight. That's how we're going to take this information from here and get you across that chasm and get over to here. We good? Okay, let's rock and roll. This whole story is going to start in your gut, specifically in your stomach. When you put food in your mouth, well, let's back up. If I started talking about food right now, if I started talking about, what's on the menu tonight, my wife's work party is tonight, okay? So we're having prime rib. So if I start talking about prime rib, what happens? What does your mouth just do? Every single one of you salivated when I said prime rib, right? That saliva contains enzymes. Those enzymes help you break down your food. So when you put food in your mouth, there's enzymes that immediately go to work on it. As you're chewing that food out, those enzymes are breaking down the proteins into amino acid, the carbohydrates into sugar, etc. Then that food is going to come down here into your stomach, where you're supposed to have this acidic environment in your stomach. When you have healthy stomach acid, you take proteins and you break them down even more into amino acids, which is what your body recognizes to make more of itself. So when we're talking about diabetes, we really have to start talking about your stomach acid right from the get-go. Because if you don't have enough stomach acid, you don't break down your food appropriately. When it does not get broken down, your food will literally sit inside of you and rot. And the stuff coming back up that's causing the burning is actually lactic acid, not hydrochloric acid. But when your doctor puts you on omeprazole or you start taking Nexium, okay, that stuff lowers all stomach acid, or excuse me, all acid. It's not specific to hydrochloric acid. All right, when that happens, your body does not convert vitamin B12 into a usable form, and as a result of B12 not being appropriate, you develop anemias that, what's beeping? Okay? Those anemias eventually end up, affecting brain function. And what does your brain control? Your metabolism. All right? Now, without proper stomach acid, you do not get a proper release of bile from your gallbladder. Stomach acid is required to get that signal going to your gallbladder to spit out bile. Do you guys know what bile is used for? Helps you break down fat.
What if you don't have a gallbladder?
That's the golden question. What if you don't have a gallbladder, Clarence?
You have problems.
There's enzymes available to help you break your fat down. Okay? All I'm saying is this story did not start when you were diagnosed with diabetes or insulin resistance or whatever. This started a long time ago. Okay? That same stomach acid is required for your pancreas to release insulin. Okay, insulin, here's how insulin works. This is your cell. Inside of your cell, there is a factory that takes glucose and oxygen into the factory and it spits out energy. Literally an electric current so that your body can function. Pretty awesome, isn't it? Okay? One of the challenges we have with life is getting glucose to actually cross the barrier or the wall that surrounds our cells. Okay, it's there to keep stuff out and selectively let the stuff in that it's supposed to let in. Okay, so your body requires these insulin receptors. This is an insulin receptor for that glucose to get across the cell wall. Okay, so when insulin is released, insulin grabs onto glucose and opens that receptor and allows glucose to enter the cell wall. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, now that's that roll right there. Once we get past the pancreas, we get down into your small intestine. Your small intestine acts like a fuel filter. Okay, what does a fuel filter do? It allows gas to get into the system, but it keeps the junk out, right? Your small intestine does the same thing. This food, as it's getting broken down, the parts of it that can be absorbed are absorbed through the small intestine, and the junk that's not supposed to get in there is kept out. And then it's sent to the colon and then packaged as waste. Okay? So once we get past the small intestine, that's when we get into the colon. And the colon, we all know where it exits. Okay? Now, within the small intestine, there are cells. This is crazy to me. Your small intestine is a barrier system. Just like I said, it's a fuel filter. But if you look at it under a microscope, what it comes down to is one single cell layer of a barrier that's one cell thick. Okay, so when we take our food, if our food is Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, okay, our small intestine is supposed to break that down into proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and lipids. Then there's chemical messengers. Here's your blood supply right here. There are chemical messengers that allow these cells to open up and allow that stuff to pass through to get in your small intestine. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. Once that happens, as I said, the waste gets to your colon. Okay, a little bit more of your fat-soluble vitamins, which are A, K, E, and D, are absorbed through your colon. Then it's excreted as waste. So there's an overall picture of how metabolism is supposed to work. But when you eat a chocolate chip cookie, what does your blood sugar do? It'll spike. Okay? There's a very specific area in your brain called your hypothalamus and your pituitary. This, what I ever want to do is just take your fingers, put it right down the bridge of your nose. Okay? About an inch behind where your finger is right now, there's a thing hanging down called your pituitary gland. Looks like a little stalk that hangs down. Okay? Above that is the hypothalamus. So when we eat and our blood sugar levels spike, that is sensed by your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus then sends a hormonal signal down to your pituitary that basically says, hey, pituitary, our blood sugar level's high. Then the pituitary releases a hormone that goes down to the pancreas and says, okay, pancreas, we have high blood sugar, you know what to do. What does it do? Makes insulin, secretes insulin. And that insulin's going to go grab onto glucose and allow glucose to enter the cell. There's the 99-cent version of what happens every time you eat. Alright? Obviously something's wrong, or you would not be spending prime Christmas shopping time sitting here with me. Do you know what the number one cause of your immune system to drive up like this is? Does anybody want to take a guess? Oops. The number one cause is going to be bad markers. Oh, dang, I thought that was going in. The number one cause is going to be autoimmunity. Right now, the medical world treats type 2 diabetes like a pure metabolic problem. Meaning, your cells have gotten lazy and they're no longer reading or talking to insulin. When in reality, there's a high probability that your immune system is actually turned against the insulin receptor. It's turned against the insulin and or turned against the pancreas. Autoimmunity basically means your own immune system hates you. And it's trying to take out your cells from the inside out. So when I see these guys like Clarence that come into the office, that they've got their blood sugar quote unquote under control, meaning from 600 down to an acceptable level, but they had to do, well, you were on 12 medications when you started, right?
17.
17 when you, man, we still got some work to do, dude. Hey, so on 17 medications to do that, they're treating it as purely a metabolic problem. But what we did with Clarence was we stepped back and say, okay, wait a minute here. What about the 2009 study from Stanford that said type 2 diabetes should actually be thought of as type 1.5 diabetes, which means your immune system's attacking the insulin receptor, the insulin, and or the pancreas and driving this up through the roof. Didn't think about that before tonight, did you? What happens here is 70 to 80% of your immune system is actually found in your gut. Okay, so when you're consuming foods that fall under what we call the standard American diet, abbreviated SAD, when you're consuming those foods, your immune system does not recognize them as actual food and recognizes them as foreign invaders. And when it recognizes them as foreign invaders, every time you eat, what do you think happens? Confusion. Your immune system becomes dysregulated so that every time you eat, it turns against those insulin receptors. So it doesn't matter how much you reduce your calories, how much you reduce your fat, or eat your quote-unquote healthy whole grains, what's your immune system going to do to those insulin receptors? Kills them off. It even kills off your pancreas and make type 2 diabetes look more like type 1 diabetes. Am I making sense? Am I speaking English? Okay, cool. This stuff, it's important, okay? So standard American diet, does anybody want me to tell you what the top 4 foods are right before Christmas?
Nothing, nothing, and nothing.
Eggnog.
Nice. I shouldn't have asked. The number 1 food is going to be gluten, the protein that's found in wheat. Okay? Wheat is not the same as it was in the 1970s. Wheat is not the same as it was in the 1800s. And it's certainly not the same wheat as it was in Jesus' time. We have genetically modified it. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. We have hybridized it. We spray a bunch of chemicals on it to produce it. And our bodies don't recognize those proteins anymore. So when we eat it, okay, it drives blood sugar levels up by causing your immune system to attack here.
You were right the first time, though. It is GMO because of Monsanto, so.
We're not, I'm trying to avoid that topic tonight. Okay. Number 2 is going to be sugar. I think that's a no-brainer. That stuff's an inflammatory mess. Okay, and we get addicted to it really, really easy.
And everything has it in it.
And everything has it in it. Okay. Number 3 is going to be milk or dairy. When you pasteurize dairy, it kills the enzymes your body needs to absorb it. And it causes the same inflammatory mess that this can happen on some people. I'll give you a specific example tonight. Okay? And then number 4 is soy, which is genetically modified so you can spray Roundup on it so it doesn't die when you kill off the weeds. That stuff gets into you and kills your gut bugs. Okay, so basically what happens is when you consume this standard American diet, it causes what we call leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut syndrome is when your immune system attacks these cells in here and causes a breakdown between these cells and allows KFC to actually enter your bloodstream as whole chunks of KFC rather than broken down into proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, etc. Okay. When that happens, your inflammatory levels go up. When your inflammatory levels go up, you take a blood vessel this big around, you put this much inflammation in there, how much blood gets through there? Not enough. And when there's not enough blood going to those 2 key nerves, what happens to those nerves? And what happens to the feeling in your feet when that happens? It becomes diabetic neuropathy, which you just have to learn how to live with, right?
Right.
Wrong. Clarence, speak up for me right now, please.
That's right. I mean,
Hey,
that's
Look.
what they want you to believe.
nerves that fire together, they wire together. If we can restore blood flow, if we can get blood sugar to get back into an acceptable level, nerves can come back. We do it every day here. All right. Now, when you put that much inflammation in there, what's going to happen to the pressure within inside of that system? It goes up. Blood pressure goes up. What happens in the medical world when your blood pressure goes up?
More medicine.
That's when you get stuck on this side of the chasm. Do you know why you're stuck in that side of the chasm? Because you're not addressing the root of the problem. Here, I should have put this over here. Here is the root of the problem. Okay. Another issue we have over here is this thing called dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is basically, it means abnormal gut bugs. You have bacteria in your gut that you cannot live without it, and it cannot live without you. You're in this symbiotic relationship with this bacteria. When it's in balance, your immune system leaves it alone and lets it do things because it helps you absorb your nutrients and get rid of waste. Okay, but when they get out of balance because of antibiotic use, foods that you consume that have glyphosates in them will break the gut bugs down, or stress, you get overgrowth of things like yeast and the bad gut bugs. And when that happens, Your immune system goes nuts. When your immune system goes nuts, what does it attack? The insulin receptors. Blood sugar goes up. Okay? But when you have that dysbiosis going on, the bad bugs will take the nutrients from you that were intended for you, and they're going to leave behind toxins that block your ability to absorb food. When you have those toxins and the bacteria taking your nutrients, what do you think your body's going to do? Think it's starving, so it hangs on to every single pound. So if you truly want to get to the root cause of your blood sugar issue, these are the issues that you've got to look at. Have I lost anybody so far? Okay, I could spend another hour talking about the just the diabetic neuropathy part of this, but I'm not going to. Okay, I'm here to tell you it is reversible. I've seen it happen. All right. So, how do we fix it? Notice I did not say cure. Did that on purpose. Hey, how do we fix it? All right. Well, here's how we do it here. Okay, the number one thing we do is we do testing. So when I'm done running my gums, and you go to Amanda to go make your appointment, okay, I want you to bring your blood test with you when you come. The medical community, they have highs and lows, right? So if you're within that high and that low number of whatever that blood test is, you're normal, there's nothing wrong, correct? Wrong. There's also a more strict range called the functional range. Okay. We want to look at the blood work that's been done. We want to see where you're at within those functional ranges. If you're out of those functional ranges, there's things that we can still detect that are root causes of this problem. Okay. But there's other things that are never checked for, like food sensitivities. I mentioned dairy earlier because there's a guy in here tonight with a diabetic neuropathy that's not sensitive to dairy. And I just gave him butter back and he's happy as can be. Okay, but the objective here is let's find out what foods are driving this inflammatory pathway. Because if we can figure out what those foods are, then we can educate you on how to eat for the rest of your life so that this problem does not come back. Okay? But what else is going on? It's not just a food sensitivity thing. What about gut bugs? What about hormones? What about all these other factors that can play a role in those? We will order those as necessary. Because we want to find the root cause of this problem for you. Okay? The second thing we do is we go through some, I hate the word detox. I've been doing this for 12 years and I still haven't gotten a better word for it. Okay? There's a process that we put people through that looks a little bit like this. For 1 week, we put people on some enzymes. Okay? Those enzymes contain enzymes. That's the smartest thing I've said all day. Enzymes that help you break your food down more fully. Completely, thank you. So, but by the time they get down into here, they're already broken down more completely, makes them easier to absorb. You get a week where you don't have to change your diet at all. You can keep eating what you want to eat. Okay? Then there's a 2 to 3 week period, sometimes longer depending on how people do, that we put people on a paleo diet. Okay? If you want to do yourself a big favor, go home and Google paleo diet tonight. It's basically meats, fruits, and vegetables. Okay? We have a way of doing it here where we have a book that's menus, recipes, shopping lists that we provide for our patients. Is it hard to follow?
No.
Okay? We try to make it as easy as we can on you. But during that 2 to 3 week period is when you have to have a very close relationship with your medical doctor. Because your blood pressure is going to come down, your sugar is going to come down, and your weight's going to come down. I can't adjust those medications for you, but they can. Okay, by the time the 4th week rolls around, this is when we start to reintroduce the foods that we know that you're not sensitive to. This is how we build and educate the diet for you so that you can get results and keep those results. Okay? The third part of it has to do with your brain. As I said before, nerves that fire together, wire together. What does that mean?
Everything's connected.
Everything's connected. What controls this entire system? Your brain. Okay? If brain function decreases because of all the inflammation that's coming from here, what's going to happen to metabolism down here? It gets all messed up. This is why type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. You get locked into these loops of bad gut health, bad brain health, inflammation, bad brain health, bad gut health, keeps going back and forth. In fact, a couple weeks ago, gosh, it's been a month ago now, I was at a seminar in Vegas, and the #1 published immunologist in the country, nobody's written more papers than this guy. He's standing in front of our group, and he said, the #1 cause, or no, how do you put it? The one thing that all Alzheimer's cases have in common, every single case, they all have an inflamed gut. All from the stuff that we talked about tonight. Because if your gut's inflamed, your brain's inflamed, your immune system becomes confused and starts attacking here. Okay, this is where my specialty comes in. When you make your appointment, we're going to sit down together as more of this, more of the testing part of this, and there's some very simple tests we can do to assess where your brain function is at. Hey, Amanda, Kim just pulled up. She's waiting for me. Would you just tell her I'm going to be just a few more minutes? Have her wait, please. We can evaluate where those nerves are at and if there's anything we can do. Okay? Because here's the trouble. Every single person who has a chronic disease, okay, there is a tipping point. And what I mean by that is there is a point that you can cross where it's too late and truly nothing can be done. The problem with that is we have no idea where you are on that continuum. People who come in here, I say it all the time, you're one stressful event away from that tipping point where you truly can't do anything. That's why the action part of this, I'm going to overemphasize when we get to that point. Okay? We've got to figure out where you are. That's where the exam, let's talk about your history, let's talk about what you want to accomplish. That's where all that's going to come from. Okay, let's loop this back. We've talked about your gut, we've talked about your immune system, we've talked about your brain. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking about the exercise, and then we're going to finish it up with the action part of this. Why do we exercise? It is not to burn calories. The whole calorie in, calorie out notion, in my opinion, is wrong. Now, we do know from research that 40 minutes of exercise a day, 5 days a week,
Brain stimulated.
say it again nice and loud for me,
Keeps your brain stimulated.
keeps your brain stimulated. But what it does specifically, it actually helps your brain, your immune system, excuse me, I cannot talk, helps your cells produce more insulin receptors. And when you have more insulin receptors, your blood sugar becomes more efficient. But here's the problem. If you've got antibodies that are attacking those insulin receptors and you build more insulin receptors, your immune system responds by building more antibodies. And you actually make the immune system part of this worse. This is one of the reasons why you don't feel well when you exercise and you've got diabetes. But just exercise more and it'll be fine, right? Okay? I tell patients all the time, it's like, look, you got to start where you are. And I've had patients that literally start by walking to the mailbox. If I get them to walk to the mailbox once a day for a week, and they handle it okay, then we can start increasing. Okay? But if we start fixing all of this at the same time, we slow that immune system process down, get the body to build more insulin receptors, and get the brain to fire, keep the brain moving. Which, by the way, Sudoku and the crossword puzzles in the newspaper, they're great for your brain, but they don't do... When it comes to brain stimulation, about 97% of it's going to come from movement, not from puzzles. Okay? So start where you are. Just start moving a little bit at a time, adding more and more. I know that sounds like a kind of a no-brainer, but it is a very simple process. Hey, that loops us back to the action part of this. What do we do about this? Hey, well, first off, go home and Google paleo diets. I've already given you that part of it. Hey, start moving more. Well, what did I say when we started this? Well, it's my purpose tonight. Your action step is to go up there and visit Amanda. There's a sheet on the back of your clipboard. Hey, if you fill that information out for Amanda and hand it to her, she'll set up an appointment for you. We do have a couple available next week, but most of them are going to be after the new year. Okay. During that meeting, if you'll bring your blood work with you, we will sit down and we will talk about what are your goals. What are you hoping to accomplish? What do you want out of this? You will not walk out of here with a prescription for more drugs, I promise. Okay?
Do you order the blood work?
If you don't have any, I can't. Okay? Now, we'll sit down together, and if you're not past that point of no return, we'll say, great, yes, there's something we can do, here's how we're going to move forward. If you're past that point of no return, I hate doing it, but I will tell you I'm sorry, we're too late. That way we don't waste time, we don't waste money. Okay? When I finish these seminars, you know the number one question I get? Does insurance pay for it, and how much is it? Okay? Insurance and Medicare look at me like I'm not medically necessary. Which is sad, because how much money did I save Medicare by helping you get off those 10 drugs?
Right.
A fortune. But they look at me like I'm not medically necessary. Because I'm a chiropractor, they want me to just adjust your spine and send you out the door and tell you you'll be fine. It's a sad reality that we live in. But here's the deal. Hey, if you make that appointment tonight and you pay for it tonight, it's $65 to sit down together and let's figure out what's wrong. Once we know what's wrong and what needs to happen, then we'll come up with a plan for you. Because you don't go from one step to the next in this office not knowing exactly how much to expect or what to expect. So if we figure out what can help you, we'll figure out what testing is appropriate, approximate time frame as far as how long it'll take, and you'll walk out of here knowing exactly how much everything costs and what time frame to expect. That's by making an appointment tonight, we'll get that started for you. Okay. When you make that appointment, Amanda's going to hand you a stack of paperwork. That paperwork's going to take you about 45 minutes to fill out, and it's very annoying. But it gives me a great, you're laughing because it was recently, but it gives me great information on how do we help you, what's your history look like, what has everybody else missed that's going to help get you to that point. Okay? During that visit, if you can please bring your spouse or significant other with you, your support system. That way we can talk about what needs to happen, changes that will need to be made, etc. But I do believe I've said everything I want to say tonight. I appreciate you guys. So on your way out, you visit with Amanda. She can get you set up for that appointment and we can rock and roll. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.